Have you ever really felt love, not just the tales you listen to, but something powerful and strong that truly makes your heart bleed and condemn you to oblivion, no matter how hardened your heart may be? In the heartbeat of Lagos, where dreams rise with the sun and secrets sleep behind smiling faces, a young woman returned home after her youth service in Kaduna State, unaware that a twist of fate with emotional trauma was already waiting at her doorstep. Not just a tale of love, but of fate, sacrifice, and the quiet war and struggles that raged in the chambers of the human heart. Ride with me on this train to feel a love, better than real, the story of Gladys. Sitting at the terrace of her family home, Judith held the arm of her fiancé, Moses Kokastic, smiling apologetically and saying, "Babe, I know that you are boiling inside you right now and I can feel it, don't lie to me. We will leave as soon as my niece gets here, I am sure she is close. It is probably the traffic." "No problem, and I am glad that you are aware of the traffic situation. I already paid for the movie tickets and we are already running late," Moses informed. "I can't miss my beautiful niece's arrival. She may be sleeping by the time I get back home at night and I don't like stale gist," Judith said with excitement. Her auntie Judith, a very stylish young lady and warm-hearted, has been like a big sister to her, and they both had a reasonable closeness that shared and kept secrets. Judith was very sociable and her fiancé Moses was successful and very well-to-do, but sometimes struggled to keep up with her social cravings, yet he was ever willing to do anything possible for love, to keep her happy, and Judith was definitely in her best days, hoping for better days of course. She was sharp, sophisticated, and proud to be engaged to Moses, a man who would soon discover a truth too dangerous to confess. Gladys returned home glowing, educated, with dreams as tall as a telephone pole. Her family was proud, especially her loving mother and a rather quiet but observant father. Moses was relieved that Gladys finally arrived and it was time for him to leave with Judith. After the unending hugs and excitement that seemed like forever, he felt a stroke of lightning that flashed through him when he shook hands with Gladys for the first time, but he quickly looked away to disguise the displeasure that was written all over him. His spirit stirred and he wondered how unhappy he had been enduring the delay. At least that was what he thought was happening, but it was different. Something ancient awakened, a storm of emotions, longing, and confusion. But he felt it was stupid and unreasonable. He managed to hide it and avoided the thought of it, but his success was only for the moment. Judith laughed heartily with excitement in the living room, almost forgetting Moses out there on the terrace, who was no longer worried about their lateness, but trying to quickly regain his composure before she came back out, so that she doesn't notice what he thought was his displeasure. Gladys felt a strange tension within her, as if something was off, but before she could wonder what it was, memory of the subtle glance between Moses and herself swept her and she dismissed it with a reminder to Judith that someone was waiting for her outside. Judith ran out to meet her man standing with both hands in his hip pockets and his back turned against the entrance door. They disappeared in his car into the cool early night for a movie. The following day, Judith took Gladys out for an unplanned welcome-back dinner. It was meant to be a simple and exciting dinner for two of them to catch up gists that were left off their phone calls. Midway into the dinner, Judith gladly called and insisted that Moses should join them since he was just within the vicinity. He reluctantly joined them with a warning that he will not stay long with them. Judith gladly introduced them officially and deliberately engaged him in their conversation. But the vigor in Gladys had dropped. Her vibe in the conversation became withdrawn. She had suffered a stroke of discomfort that she couldn't explain. She couldn't meet his eyes, and the discomfort was very obvious that she felt like she was trembling inside and she just wished he left. Indeed, it wasn't any good idea that her auntie invited him to join them. Moses never expected himself to be comfortable there at all, but every tug of war with his fiancée had always gone in favor of her because he was always doing everything to please her. He deliberately avoided a trouble handshake with Gladys when they were officially introduced, and to that, Gladys was grateful to God that he did not proffer one. They both learnt their lesson from the effect of their first handshake just a day before. He suffered quietly and so did she, for admiration had become temptation, and temptation, a hidden fire. His presence was brief, but Gladys was able to register how comforting and nice he spoke. Almost as if he had a blanket covering her to protect her and telling her not to worry, that everything was fine. Just then, Judith made up an excuse for her, saying, "Don't mind my niece, she can be very shy sometimes, especially if she is meeting you for the first time. She is very nice to be with. As a matter of fact, she is my best friend and my favorite niece." Moses quickly stole a glance across her face and simply said, "She is very beautiful. She is fine, everything will be fine." This didn't help Gladys at all. She was sunk deeper into the aura of emotional turmoil. "He said that I was fine and everything will be fine," as if he was reading my thoughts. Did he really say I was beautiful? Yes, of course I know that I am beautiful, but why did he say it? Why is it coming from him? I feel like fainting. She was thinking to herself and really felt like she wanted to faint. Just when she decided that she was going to the ladies' room, Moses pulled back his chair and announced that he was leaving. Gladys was overjoyed, but the worst just unfolded. After sharing a hug and a light kiss with Judith, he took 2 steps closer to Gladys and proffered a handshake. It took Moses a whole lot for him to summon the courage, and that was why he saved it for the last. He even rehearsed over and over again in his mind what he would say. A shocked Gladys needed to behave and compose herself, and so she courageously met his waiting hand with hers, and he said, "You are so beautiful, and please don't let me ruin your evening. But try and be comfortable around me because I don't bite." Gladys only flashed a brief glance at his face with a fading semblance of smile that faded away before it even came out. Moses was happy that she helped him boost his confidence by not looking into his eyes. He excused himself and left. The trouble continued as Moses' world shifted. His heart, which was once steady in Judith's hands, now trembled in the shadow of a silent affection. Moses had never seen anything like that before, not even in the movies. He had been in out of loving relationships in the past, but what he was experiencing right then only revealed to him that he had never experienced the weight of love before. He wasn't even sure of what was happening, but one thing that seemed possible was the fact that she was feeling something too. It might not be the same fire that was burning, but something was definitely happening on her side. If she ever felt a fraction of what he was feeling, she definitely had more obstacles to contend with, Moses was thinking to himself. He knew she was a fresh young lady that was still yet to fully secure her freedom from parent. He knew she had Judith, her beloved auntie, to contend with. He knew that she could have their friendship and trust to contend with. He knew that family ties was at stake. It was too absurd for Moses to even think of it. At the end of the day, he felt she was too innocent to carry the weight of such betrayal on her shoulder. What was also more worthy of consideration was the fact that, should he proceed with his marriage plans with Judith, his struggles with Gladys would definitely linger on forever. Moses stopped picking Gladys' calls and broke up communication with her for almost 2 weeks, avoiding running into her without words, because he didn't even know what to tell her. He was confused and broken by his own feelings. Judith had even stopped calling him after making lots of effort to communicate and hear from him to find out what was happening. After discovering that his action was deliberate, she gave up since he was not man enough to discourse matters with her. On a fateful Friday afternoon, which was about 3 weeks since the incident at the dinner night out, Gladys decided to cut short her job hunt because she was beginning to feel an impromptu cramp. She got into a shopping mall to get some sanitary pad on her way home. She stood at a pavilion facing the entrance to the shopping mall and busied herself with her cell phone trying to place an order for a ride home. "I could have bet my life that it was you when I saw you from afar." Gladys was startled to lift her head away from her phone and saw Moses looking stunningly handsome and standing before her. She couldn't miss the charm and the attraction, and surprisingly, she seemed composed. She smiled and adjusted the strap of her handbag on her shoulder and said, "Your life. That is way too much to bet on." "Good afternoon, Mr. Moses." "Good afternoon." "And yes, my life. I mean whatever that is left of it," Moses responded. So you are not feeling well. No wonder we have not been seeing or hearing from you, but the way you are referring to your life, is the sickness life-threatening? Gladys responded, and Moses said, if I was sick I would have known what to do about it, but I don't have a clue about what to do with my life right now. There you go again, mentioning your life as if it means nothing to you, Gladys said, and Moses responded calmly but emphatically, it will mean so much to me if you are in my life, because right now, you are just hanging in there and tormenting me helplessly. Her smile vanished and she looked him straight in the eyes intently but speechless and unsure of what to say. Moses quickly realized that she may become uncomfortable and would not be able to lean on him for comfort. It's fine, Gladys. So, what brought you here? Were you waiting for someone? I was trying to order a ride to take me home, she informed calmly but with deep resonance. Oh, it's fine, let me take you home. I can buy the time, Moses volunteered and led her to his car while she remained very quiet. As soon as the car got onto the driveway, Moses confessed with trembling voice, I tried. I really tried, Gladys, God knows I tried, but every time I closed my eyes, I see you. Gladys sat at the passenger seat beside him and looking blankly but straight to the road while in deep thought. She was still lost in confusion as the whole feeling started gripping her all over again and she struggled to control herself. She had fought feelings of her own, secret crush on him that was no longer secret, dreams she dared not share with anyone but herself. She replied with grace, you belong to my auntie, Mr. Moses. And I belong to someone else too. If you did not belong to me and me to you, you wouldn't pull such powerful effect on me and placed me under such a love spell since the first day I saw you. I am very much aware of the circumstances that surrounds you, your auntie, your parent, but think about it, if you have any feelings at all, any form of feelings, no matter how small it may be, then it is worth giving it a consideration, Moses said. Small feelings. If only he knew what I was going through because of him, Gladys thought to herself as Moses continued, I broke up with Judith because of you, Moses said, but that wasn't news to her because she already suspected that he may have been avoiding Judith because of her. It was Gladys' turn to cast blames of life. Why must life comes with so much complication on something as sweet as love? I know that this is complicated, but we can make it work, we can find a way, Moses said, and Gladys was shocked. Again she wondered why he always had to say what was troubling her mind. Was he reading her mind? Does it mean that he knew all about what she was going through and how she felt about him? She told herself to relax her mind and not to think in his presence. I have a lot to say to you, but right now I am heavily burdened like you are. Love. Why are we fighting it? Moses asked, and they drove in silence without answer to the question, but in deep thought until they got to her house gate. He dropped her off and they both parted without any word. But the silence was pregnant with deeply rooted words, and Gladys stood by the gate and watched him drove away. Love unspoken is definitely the loudest. That night was traumatic in the world of her emotion. She locked herself in her room and did not come out for dinner, nor did she join the rest of the family members for the regular bedtime prayers. She searched for sleep, but her heart pounded as she played back her conversation with Moses word for word from the very moment he met her standing to the silence that bid them goodbyes. She hated herself every time she remembered that she never said, "Thank you for bringing her home." She laid still in the dark, her eyes piercing through the thick darkness of her room. Gladys was in a bookstore looking at a book that was up on display on the bookshelf, and when she turned, she saw Moses looking so handsome as usual, walking up to her with a warm, gentle smile on his face. She smiled back at him and happily lifted up her hands to his warm embrace. They kissed lovingly and he said, "I will love you and honor you forever." She said, "I love you more," and they walked hand in hand towards the exit door as she flaunted his engagement ring on her finger. With a joy-filled heart, she smiled and turned to looking into his face. But as she turned, she found herself turning on her bed, at the brightness of the morning sun that filtered into her room through the window. Her smile still hanging on her face as Moses gradually faded away with her sleepy swollen eyes from a sleepless night. It was a dream. Another dream, she reminded herself. As days faded into nights and nights gave way to daylight, Gladys' restlessness refused to subside. She still had a boyfriend, gentle, loyal, everything a girl should want, but Moses was the dream that refused to fade. She turned Moses down. Again and again, but some fires don't die in the rain. They wait. But for how long will she fight this? The more she fought it, the deeper she sank. Even her love for Kenny, her devoted boyfriend, began to crack and vanished from the picture. She scarcely picked his calls and never returned any, but she didn't know why. One night, as the rain tapped on the windows, Mama Ardor pulled Gladys aside. She knew something was happening in the life of her daughter and was worried that her usually cheerful daughter had not been herself since she came back. She prayed about it. I don't know what is happening, but the only revelation that I saw in my dream was strange. I know that my revelations are always on point, but this was strange, she said to Gladys, who in turn asked, "What are you talking about, Mama?" It was Moses I saw, and that troubled my spirit. There's something off, she said. My sister is like a daughter to me. Be careful, my dear, this is not right, she concluded. But with love, what is right when the heart has chosen? And what is wrong when destiny refuses to be denied? Months into her job hunt to get herself occupied and busy, she got a very good offer with Greenview Advertising Agency. She was very lucky to have that job, and she started off very smoothly. She was assigned to the Yabacon production account, and she counted her blessing because Yabacon Production Limited was located on the 13th floor of the same office complex with her agency. She had an appointment to meet with Yabacon marketing manager for an introduction and formality update. The receptionist directed her to a corner office, and she smilingly pushed open the glass door while disregarding the voice that may have sounded familiar to her. And there it was, the game of fate, and as fate would decree. The marketing manager of Yabacon was Mr. Moses Kokastik. They stared at each other in stunned silence. Time seemed to have paused, as if the universe wanted them to breathe the same moment. Silence filled the room as they locked eyes, and only the universe could whisper, "Here we meet again." She was stuck in his kingdom. And maybe his arms, Gladys thought to herself with her eyes bulging. Her very first assignment led her to him, in his office, in the same office building. Moses was quick to overcome the shock of her presence. She was by no means just a familiar person, she was the storm of his emotion. What written rule or strength of professionalism can handle this storm? He asked himself. He decided to go with her flow and do the best he could to put his emotion in check. But when he realized that the person sitting before him was struggling to compose herself, he decided to take charge and stay formal. He made a formal and casual welcoming introduction which started by congratulating her on her new job. Gladys loosened up a bit and came out of her frozen shell. The meeting went well, and she was not only relieved but also happy. The only tensed moment that resurfaced was inside the elevator. Moses had escorted her down to her office, but when they got into the elevator, the only third party came off just at the 12th floor, and the moment the door was closed, they were quiet. The question was, how far and where did the boundaries of professionalism covered? The silence was gravy. Gladys bowed her head as if trying to count her toes to be sure that the number had not increased. Moses had his both hands in his hip pockets, standing right in front of her and wondering how the blessing of his life can be so stormy and costly, yet standing right here with him. Gladys summoned the courage and slowly raised her head. She locked her eyes with his and smiled, looking more beautiful, even though the smile was forced. His heart skipped and he inhaled heavily to compensate for the skipped breath. "We are here," he said to her, and she turned to realize that the elevator door was already opened on her floor, waiting for them. The door almost closed back on her, but Moses was quick to intervene. She thanked him as they walked side by side to her office door, and there it was again. The handshake. As days and weeks fades off, they had become very used to each other. calling and chatting on the bases they chose to fool themselves with and termed platonic bases, while they both go home to feel the real emotional trauma. This time, they didn't fight it. Love had its way and slowly, but steadily returned quietly, powerfully and completely. What started as awkward professionalism turned into friendly collaboration, and then a slow rekindling of unspoken love. Moses practically dropped her off at home every day at the close of work. They see each other every day and sometimes had lunch in each other's company. They were fond of each other and enjoyed each other's company. It was evident that they have submitted to each other as partners in disguise. Life was good and love was well brewed. They try to fight it again, but love, once awakened, refuses to die for nothing. Moses was driving her back home after work one day and he said to her, "I want to ask you for something very important, and it will mean a whole lot to me if you can choose to do it for me. I mean, it will mean the world to me. You just locked me in with no choice. What is it?" She asked. "Today is a very special day for me and I will love to honor this day with you. For the first time in my life, I have found a reason to celebrate this day and you are the reason that I must celebrate this day. I have waited all my life to finally meet you and know you and maybe have you. But all that I am asking of you is a dinner tonight." "Done," she responded without mincing words. "You just responded, 'Done,' I need to be sure that you are up for it because it's been on my mind all week," he said to her to be sure that she was coming with him, and she turned and looked at him with lustful eyes and said convincingly, "If you had listened to the poetry that you just said right now, you will not only realize that you left me with no choice but also, I will be heartless if I don't show up." "I didn't mean to sound that way, but is 9 p.m. okay with you?" he asked, and she responded, "I will be ready by 8:30 p.m. Dinner was great at Calabar Lake View Restaurant, where Gladys discovered and realized that there was more to life than what she had been limited to. The serenity of the place, the caliber of people that walked in and out of the place, the food was even secondary, but the best she has had, the music and view of the blinking reflection of the stars in the sky on the surface of the sea, and obviously she couldn't forget the electrifying energy that swallowed her when he held her to his pounding chest for a slow dance to the music that was obviously dedicated to him. And then the kiss. Oh my God, the kiss. He stopped dancing and held her by the arms, looking straight into her eyes. She was lost and gone, her eyes became blank and she prayed silently for him to do it. "Please, do it," she almost muttered. She wanted it, she needed it to quench the fire in her because she was tired of it all, and this moment was significantly remarkable and worthy of the flow. The wet and warmth of his lips on hers was most welcome and tasteful. She swallowed it all in one take and her whole world seemed right. The smell of his breath was delightful and she drew his neck a little closer. The gentle wave of hypnotisms was heavenly as the whole world collapsed and left her on the throne with her man. She felt his tongue on hers like she needed it forever, and then the sound of trumpet that sounded like the last day on earth brought her back to reality, and she opened her eyes and saw some drummers and a trumpet guy playing around them. She gently pushed him off and broke away. "This is madness, my family. Judith, my mother will never understand. Yes, I love you, I want this, but life is not fair. Where was God when you met my auntie, my own lovely auntie of all people?" Her tears got him heartbroken and he paid off the band to leave them alone. They sat down, and he talked her out of her sudden mood and brought her back to the memories of where she stopped with the kiss. The following day at work, there was no communication between them. She did not call or chatted him up and neither did he. At the close of work, she decided to go down to the parking lot and wait for him by his car. But he was already in the car waiting for her. The greeting was devoid of its usual spice. The moment they got to the expressway, she directed him to take her to his house and he was secretly delighted to, but remained silent as he drove her to his house without forgetting to ask her about her day at work. She got to his house and appreciated the environment in her silence. She got into his apartment and took the beautifully furnished living room in one glance and turned to face him directly with just 2 feet distance between them. "I have my reason for coming here," she said to him. Please make love to me, she said with a very fainting tone. Moses was not prepared to hear that from her, and he stood there staring at her with his mouth half opened and his house key hanging loosely on his finger. He swallowed heavily and said, "Okay, but before we get to that, just settle down and tell me the reason you are here first, because you just said that you have your reason for coming here." Moses dragged his words while trying to recover himself. "That's the reason I came here. But I must warn you not to feel disappointed that I am still a virgin. I promised myself that I will only do it with my husband when I get married," she said. "I will wait with you. I will wait for you, I am ready and willing to wait," Moses promised while nodding his head gently. "You don't understand. That's a promise I made and a promise that I must keep. Just me and my husband. If you make love to me now, I will have something to fight for, no matter what the obstacle may be. Something to fight and protect. Because there would be too much for me to lose. I will fight to be with you, because I have a commitment to protect." She was still shaking with words when Moses buried her lips in his mouth and swallowed her soft warm body in his starving embrace. The sense in what she was saying just hit Moses, and he realized that that was his one and probably the only opportunity to finally seal their bond as a commitment to each other, and he wasted no time about it. When Gladys came out from the bathroom, she discovered that at the dimly lit corner of his bedroom was a portrait of a lady. She wondered which of Judith's picture was hanging there. She went closer to take a good look but was shocked to see her own picture beautifully framed. "I got it from your social media page," Moses said right behind her and so close to her ears. She turned to him and looked questioningly into his eyes for the first time ever. "Are you infatuated or obsessed?" she asked. "I am just truly and deeply in love with you. I needed this picture here so that I can see you every morning when I wake up to pray and say some affirmations to manifest you," Moses said. "Promise me that you will not break my heart," she requested. "I owe my life to you, and I promise never to do you wrong in any way, or worst still, break your heart. If you say yes to me now, today, I am ready," Moses declared. She held him close and kissed him lovingly, and then she said, "I have a battle to survive at home and I need to clear the air at the home front first." Their bond was established that night and their relationship became official, but their future was swinging on the cliff of the home front. Gladys and Moses were officially in a relationship on a turbulent ground. Gladys was determined to end her trauma, her misery and her troubles. She was determined to get her life back and be willing to welcome what life had in stock for her. She was ready to embrace the expected wave of rage from her home front, knowing that it was gonna cool off with no time. But one thing that she solidly made up her mind about was that she was not going to keep her relationship with Moses a secret. No, she was going to keep it open and denied nothing if asked about. Eventually, her mother was quick and the first to confirm her suspicion, and Gladys readily acknowledged its facts. Judith had since broken up with Moses and moved on, blaming distance and incompatibility, but she never knew the full story. Rumors spread among family and neighbors about Gladys and Moses, but Judith dismissed it as mere acquaintance running into each other. But on that fateful evening, Judith found out with strong evidence and stormed into the house, causing a scene that brought tears to Gladys' eyes. It was at the same time that her mother was at the pick of her rage that evening. "You want to marry your auntie's lover, don't you have shame in you? You want to disgrace me in this community," her rage continued. The only thing that had a conducive atmosphere to flourish was the stream of tears that flowed from her eyes as she leaned her back against the wall, standing crucified. The heavy nails were the devastating words that bombarded her from two of her closest family members. She wept bitterly, more inside of her than what could be seen on the surface. "You win, but win completely, because broken love leaves scars," Judith finally said to her and walked away into her room, banging the door behind her. The family house was a shadow of itself, clouded with silent bitterness as every member communicated with each other with silent undertone from their stomach. Days passed and Judith left for Canada as earlier planned. The heat was hot and steady. Gladys was overwhelmed and she eventually ran away. Not from love, but from the battlefield of loyalty and blames. Gladys was gone. She showed up on a quiet prayer mountain in Ekiti State. She prayed with supplication at a lonely corner on the top of the mountain for hours. In her solitude, she found a voice greater than judgment. Mama Arduke, an elderly prophetess, spoke to her, "My child, not every war is between wrong and right. Sometimes it's between duty and destiny. Some love stories are written before birth. But even the stars must fight for their place in the sky. You have paid the price of your heart, follow your heart. The storm will soon give way for joy. Some loves are meant to break rules. Even heavens break silence when true hearts speak." Gladys returns home, stronger. She apologizes to Judith over the phone for the pain caused, and also to her mother, but chose love with a bold resolution. In all of these, her father was watching quietly and observing all that unfolded until when he felt the time was right, he spoke one night in few words. "Let her be happy, she didn't steal love but love found her. Love is not theft, Judith is gone but Gladys is here. She deserves to choose happiness too." In the days that followed, Moses started getting his clearance and welcome into the family. The bond was smooth and natural with the rest of the family members and ultimately with Gladys. A year later, the wedding bell was louder than it was rung, considering the circumstance that surrounded the genesis of their romance. It was all set and booming on the eve of their wedding when everything took an immediate halt and tension rented the air. Fear of the unknown gripped the hearts of all as the Uberman pulled up in their family home and Judith came out. She did not get the welcome she deserved as everyone stared with fear. No one offered to help with her luggage, almost as if she was not welcomed. Gladys' father walked up to her and collected her box from her and led her into the house. Gladys's mother stood by her room door with her whole being blanketed with fear and uncertainty. She looked at Judith, her sister, sitting on the bed but wasn't sure of how best to start up any conversation. Though, unaware of what was to come, Gladys was less obvious with the accumulated fear in her. She got into Judith's room and breezed past her mother with her opened arms as Judith quickly jumped up and they hugged each other screaming with joy. Her mother sneaked out of the room and excused herself with her arms folded across her chest as she paced up and down in the living room, wondering how naive her daughter was, to assume everything was all right with Judith's presence. The following day hosted an exclusive colorful wedding of Gladys and Moses, with Judith playing the role of the maid of honor. This was what she insisted on, and they spent the night trying to convince her otherwise, but she stood her ground that she must be the maid of honor at the wedding. Half the crowd sat with fear at the wedding, wondering what was soon to come as they practically had their eyes on Judith all the time. 3 bouncers were urgently contracted to blend in with the crowd and stayed close and ready for anything. This was secretly arranged by Moses. Marital vows were taken with heavy hearts, laden with fears and anxiety. As a matter of fact, their kiss on the altar meant little or nothing to them as compared to the fear of the expected looming explosion from Judith. But Gladys was calm and completely surrendered to fate. But in the meantime, it was colorful and glamorous as expected. Everyone was well entertained. The band and the caterer were handsomely paid and they did a good job. The host also did a good job entertaining the audience with nice jokes until he was assisted by the one person in the hall that shouldn't handle the microphone. Judith walked over and collected the microphone. Hearts paused and silent tension diffused into the air for everyone to freely breathe. The host admiringly handed the microphone to Judith. Judith collected the microphone and people's heart froze for a brief seconds. A lot of people expected that moment, or maybe not what they expected. She joyfully and excitingly cracked a few jokes that were only enjoyed by those who didn't know their story. She talked about her beloved niece, Gladys, and how much she loved her and will always do. She jokingly announced to the people to leave their family gist alone and mind their own business because family is family and blood is thicker than water. Then she turned and looked directly at Gladys and said, "Some battles are not worth fighting because some things may be for the best. I wish you peace, joy, and a happy family of your own. Just know that you owe me a lot for keeping Moses for you to come. If not for me, maybe some hot Lagos babes would have grabbed him before you came back." Then she looked at Moses. "Moses, you must love and take absolutely good care of my sister. She is not my niece. She is officially my twin sister." The crowd erupted with applause, standing ovation, and tears of joy on the make-up faces of those who knew their story. Gladys almost missed her steps as she ran and jumped up to embrace Judith. Moses covered them with his arms in a cheerful embrace. Gladys' mother was still sobbing when her husband dabbed his own eyes with handkerchief underneath his eyeglasses. The DJ added icing to the cake with a music that got everyone dancing. Gladys' mother struggled to control her cry while dancing. "May your love heal where it once wounded." She blessed their union with tears. It really had been ordained from above. A love that found its voice. When the heart whispers, even thunder must listen. Don't forget, the river of love flowed where it willed, breaking rocks, turning valleys into gardens. Let this story remind you, destiny delays, twists, and turns. Love conquers. Whispers of the heart.